From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. I'm the founder, CEO, and chief creator of Amazing Ideas and Stunning Digital Marketing. In this podcast, I have Kristen Wright of Automatic and the Day One app with me to discuss all things journaling. Grab a drink, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. This episode of the SDM Show is sponsored by Stunning Digital Marketing, the agency to handle all your WordPress website security needs. Go on over to stunningdigitalmarketing.com and find out how we can help you secure your website so you no longer have an issue with backups, being hacked, or your website being compromised. That's stunningdigitalmarketing.com. Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. And today I'm here with my guest, Kristen Wright, who works at the Day One app, an Automatic company. How are you today, Kristen?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, such a pleasure. And today you and I are going to have a little bit of a discussion about journaling and what it means to somebody, productivity, and we'll talk a little bit about the Day One app as well. You get an interesting history. How did you end up at the Day One app and with Automatic? And tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, where do I begin? I actually worked as marketing director at iThemes for about 11 years. So I transitioned over to the Day One team at Automatic last September. And so that's been a big change and a big move for me, but an exciting one, just because journaling, frankly, is my passion and was my hobby. I've written a few books on the side about journaling. And so it just was a very natural and meaningful move for me to go work on the Day One team. But been in the WordPress space, like I said, for about 11 years. So it also seemed to make a lot of sense to move to Automatic and be more involved there. So
that's absolutely awesome. And I've had several automaticians on this show. So welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rob.
Before we jump into journaling, I want to lead with a bit of a story. Many, many years ago, I have a dear friend of mine who came to me and she said, I have my great-great-great-grandfather's journal. And it dated back to the turn of the century. And she said to me, Rob, what's the best way to share this with your family? And I said, well, I wouldn't give them the original books because that's a bit of a problem. Because if you lose them, you're up a creek. And I think there was, at that time, 12 or 14 volumes. And I said, maybe what we should do is scan these, because they were all handwritten to the turn of the century. So the family value on this was pretty awesome. And it was really interesting to read her great-great-great-grandfather's look on things as a young 20-year-old looking at the world at that point. It was just such a fascinating. Now, what I'll tell you is scanning that mess was a hell of a project and a lot of work. So, but there's one of the benefits to journaling is, you can see if you choose to share your journal, you can share your thoughts with others after you put them down. What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's interesting. A lot of the insights we have about history, frankly, come from diaries and journals. And, for example, Anne Frank's diary. There's just so many examples throughout history. And but just on the personal level, to have that record of someone's life, it's just so insightful and just so incredible.
Yeah. And I also tell people, like, I journal. So I was sharing you before we went to record. I journal every day. I've journaled every day for, probably 25, 30 years. I started originally in bound books. Yes, I still have them. I'm in the process of actually digitizing those. So we're going to get rid of the books because they just take too much space. a number of years ago, I transitioned to a Google Doc. And one of the reasons I use a Google Doc is it's so cross-platform and so non-issue for me that that's easy. And it's funny because people always say to me around me, "Can I read your journal?" And my answer is no. I put stuff in there that if my friends or my family or my partner read, not so much her, but other people, they would yell at me and say, "Did you really say what you said?" Yeah, I did, because that's what it's there for. But people have a connotation that diaries and journals are all negative, and I don't necessarily agree with that. What do you think?
I absolutely agree. Well, I would say both, right? Like, I think that one of the key characteristics of a journal and a diary is that it's like the one place that you get to be completely honest and without, the fear that someone's going to be reading it or looking over your shoulder or giving you likes or, any of that, right? So I think that's one of the key characteristics of a journal. I will say, though, that my first two books were my journals. I decided to publish, 2-3 years worth of journals. And I think for me, that was an exercise in vulnerability. I'd really been exploring kind of just that journey through vulnerability and authenticity. And so as I had started to journal, write more about my life, my daily life, I decided to share it and publish them. So
that's awesome, Kristen. That's really awesome. And what I would say to people is, if you want to, and you're afraid of this task of journaling and saying, "Oh, it's one more task," what I would say is grab a book and start tonight and write one line or write 2 lines and then go from there. Do you think that works, or do you think that's a bad way to start?
Oh, I think that's a wonderful way to start. I think, start where you can. I think, for a lot of people, a sentence a day is plenty. I think that's why gratitude journaling is really a great way to start, because it doesn't seem so overwhelming to write down a few things you're grateful for each day, or just write a sentence a day, just about something that happened.
Yeah. And there's all kinds of, let's talk about the different types of journaling. What do you think is the most important ways to journal, and how?
I think I've really found 3 different approaches to journaling that seem to work for me. And the first one is just expressive writing. And so this is kind of how I started journaling, was just recapping my day, writing about what happened, just kind of like my thoughts and feelings. For me, I think I tend to live in my head a lot, and just getting things out onto the page is really just clarifying and freeing, frankly. Susan Cain, one of my favorite authors, has this really great quote about just the very act of writing something down transforms it. And that's something I've seen a ton in the act of journaling, is that just putting something into words really transforms it. And I think that's where expressive writing comes in. The second one is for productivity. This is something I've actually started more of in the past 6 months since I joined Automatic in the Day One team, is using journaling as kind of a clarifying, like, mental clarity exercise every morning. That I have a template of prompts and questions that I ask myself every single morning. They always surprise me, even though I do it every single morning, but it just is really clarifying, and it helps me be more productive and focused, and just so I feel, more centered every morning about like what I need to get done and how to move forward. The third one is gratitude journaling. And, gratitude journaling, I think the culmination of both of those things, because while I was doing expressive writing, I think I tended to want to focus on the good stuff that was happening in my life, or the, beautiful moments, or the meaningful or significant things that happened every day, which is, that is gratitude. And I think being more templated or prompt focused with your gratitude journaling, just like, what am I thankful for today, and making a list, I always feel like a shift in my mindset every single time I do it. And there's actually a lot of science and research behind gratitude journaling specifically, which I think is interesting. But those are the 3 that I tend to want to do the most when it comes to journaling.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I'm probably more an expressive writer, and I'm probably
Hmm.
more a gratitude person in my journal. I tend to combine them and overlap depending on the mood I'm in, but for me, that's kind of the really important things. Um, I think the biggest part about journaling and the hardest part, people, and we kind of said about how to start, is routine. So I think what works for a lot of people, it's like I call it mental exercise for the head, if you want
Hmm.
to kind of go there. So we all go for a walk. I go for a walk every day pretty well. And that's good for the physical side, but you still need to exercise the brain. And one of the reasons I exercise the brain is by journaling. And it's just getting into that habit of doing it every day. And I'll look at it before bed, but the odds are, as the day goes, I've probably thrown three or four things into that journal during the course of the day. I've already thrown one thing in this morning. So, I mean, do you find it's better to define a time or just to write when you think you want to write?
I think this is one of those questions I'm still wrestling with a little bit personally. I had a son 3 years ago, and that has definitely changed my schedule up a bit. But in having a toddler, but in the past, finding a specific time of day to journal is really what has worked for me. In the past, that was kind of before bed. I do not have the mental bandwidth to do that anymore. So mornings are really when I tend to journal. And as far as, my templated journals and the stuff that I do in the morning, I try to spend the first 30 minutes of my work day journaling, and just blocking off that time. And so creating that habit, getting into the routine is really what I think is the key to success, especially for me. Just like, that I try to work out at lunchtime, and just like I need to build that routine in that like repetitive behavior. So I just like don't even have to make the decision. It's just like what I do every day at 12:30. So
Yeah. And it's funny, people who don't understand routine say, how do you do this? How do you do this? How do you do this? And I
mhm.
say, are you ready to laugh, folks? It's in my calendar. I
Yes.
I actually take my calendar and I book journaling time in before bed. I book reading time in before bed. I book exercise time in before dinner. And it goes right in my calendar. And people say, but I wouldn't run my day that way. And my response is, well, that's the problem. You don't think about how you run your day, and you kind of fly by the seat of your pants every day.
Yeah, I think that's blocking off time, setting reminders, all of those things are one of those, keys to success. And, you've got like a lot of times these things that you want to do aren't going to just happen, without you taking some sort of step or making some sort of sacrifice. And, yeah, I think the things that are most important to you, you've got to block time off in your day, and you've got to schedule and build that habit.
No. So let's jump into a little bit into the Day One app, and
Yeah.
I personally think it's an ideal platform for Automatic because it's all about democratizing publishing on the web. That's been Matt Mullenweg's goal since day one, I would say. And
Hmm.
I mean, and you look at some of the acquisitions, there's the Day One app, which they acquired. There's also a company called Pocket Cast, which is a podcast company which they acquired. So I think it's all in this line of how to democratize publishing. What do you think?
Absolutely. I totally see how day one fits into Automatic's mission. I think it is interesting, though, that I think so much of WordPress, specifically as a blogging platform, is kind of that more like public facing and expressive and, spreading of ideas and democratizing publishing. I think, though, that for journaling, this is more of an internal and a private space, So, but I think making that available to everyone is really the important part, right? That everybody should have access to this kind of tool that, enlightens you, gives you a place to be introspective, and can ultimately, I think, fuel the work that you put out into the world and that you share with everybody else.
Yeah, so true. Um, Talk to me if you could speak around the features of the Day One app. Like, why would you want to go to a day one app versus pen and paper, or versus, say, using like a Word document or a Google Doc or something like that? Like, why would you prefer that?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to this personally a bit because I kept about 8 or 9 years of my journals in an app called Simple Note, which actually Automatica owns as well. It's a note taking app. Because, I think at, that point in my life, I wanted to make journaling let's just keep it simple, right? Like, I just need a text editing app, right? Like, I just need to be able to write very simple sentences, and I don't want to deal with even text formatting. I just want to get the thoughts out and move on from there. I also liked that it was date based, that like I could have a separate entry for each date, and then I could kind of like organize my entries in that way, because I think, at the end of the day, that's still what the heart of journaling is about, is kind of like that daily chronicle. And so I actually moved to day one about 2 months into my interview process. As I thought, well, I absolutely need to start using this app. And I'll say it's transformed my own journaling practice. I cannot even believe that I was not using the app to journal, because it's just unlocked so many other ways and approaches to journaling for me. One of those is really just like the visual element of journaling, like just to be able to like upload photos from my camera roll, especially since, with day one, you can have separate journals. So now I have separate journals for like my son, for example. Like, I've started keeping a journal for him. And so I can upload a photo a day from like stuff we did. Like, he just started T-ball, and it's been hilarious because, he's learning how to play T-ball. And so last night, I was just uploading a few photos from T-ball practice. And I hadn't really used multimedia in my journaling at all, but I think day one allows you to take journaling beyond just like the written word. And I think that's where pen and paper falls short, right? Like, if you want to add photos to your paper journal, that's going to take a lot of work, as far as like printing things out and the expense of it. So multimedia uploads, I think, is definitely one of the things about day one that's really great. And I mean, that's actually free for everybody. So if, the free version allows you to upload, a photo, and, that's just really useful. Secondly, I think, is security. And it's really interesting because I even come from a security background, and I hadn't really considered the fact that like my journals really weren't encrypted or secure. Like, literally anybody could read them if they wanted. And so being at day one now, I really respect and admire that the work that they're doing behind the scenes related to end-to-end encryption of your data. Like, we can't see any of your data. We can't, even if we wanted to, we can't. And so I think that's really important, is that journals should be absolutely private and secure. And the fact that, that day one offers end-to-end encryption is a huge benefit. I listened to a really interesting lightning talk at one of our meetups about how the end-to-end encryption works, and I'm still trying to understand it, because that's how it's an amazing system. And I think we're going to actually try to unpack that a little bit more for users, just so they fully understand that like this is amazing, amazing technology. There's other things in the app. If you let me go on, sorry, I'm going on.
Talk
Yeah.
about the features of the app.
Yeah, so there's also some really great templating options. So I've really started to dig more into templates as, like repeatable prompts that I ask myself every day, right? So, I talked about my morning check-in prompt. And so I built a template in day one now that I use every single morning, work morning. And I think the ability to be able to build repeatable formats for your journal entries unlocks a whole other like time saving feature, that's just, it's just amazing to be able to have that work already done. And so I don't have to, repeat my, those questions. Another thing too, that I'll say I'm personally proud of, is the prompts. Like, there are daily prompts inside the app. And so for a lot of people, answering prompts is a really great way to get started. And so I've actually been able to start helping, I'm helping write the prompts inside the app. And so every day you can get a new daily prompt. And I think that's just a really amazing, useful way that the app also can help you, get started. Finally, one last one is there's a feature called streaks, right? And so Streaks are just like a visual view of the calendar and how many days you've journaled. And so you can build your journaling streak. And we kicked off a new blog series called Streak Stories. And I mean, we have users who have been journaling every day for 4,000 days or more. So they're streaks of like over 800 years. But I think the app really is designed to help you build a daily journaling habit by having all these like time saving and features for encouragement, frankly. So
That's really great. Now, when day one started, it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, exclusively an iOS app, correct?
correct.
And now it's kind of branched out to Android as well? Or-
Yes, we do. We have an Android app, and some of the more active development is going on with Android actually as we try to get that app, with feature parity. Of course, it's been interesting since I don't come from a mobile app background. It's been super interesting to kind of learn and watch how development works and just how different the two platforms are, right? So it's really hard to actually get feature parity between iOS and Android, but we are working on it. And like just this past week, we introduced templates into Android. So now you have templates, which is something that the app lacked in the past. And I'll also say we just launched a web version too. So you can access your day one journal from your browser. So any browser.
Now, I think for me, what is, and I was saying this to you before we went to record, what's kind of stopped me from using day one and past is I'm an Android user, number one.
Yep.
I'm also a web user, so that kind of opens some doors up there. I do have an iPad, I will say that, but I also look at my toolbox, and most of the apps that I run are cross-platform apps for exactly that reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why it's been so important for us, to try to get the Android app, up to feature parity. And so we are putting a lot of time and effort. And I mean, the roadmap is really exciting. It's been really, really fun to watch that team really, get down to business with getting those new features and updates pushed.
Yeah, and I'm sure, and people that don't understand mobile development is it's not a case of taking an iOS app and slapping it on Android or vice versa. There's a lot of integration, a lot of work that's involved, and I don't think the end user has that appreciation value. They're just like, why can it just be done overnight and wave a magic wand and be done with it kind of deal. So.
I'm so glad you said that. Yeah, it is. It isn't. It's tough. I'm learning all about this, so it's really interesting.
Before I got into marketing, Kristen, I'm an old-time professional mainframe coder, so I understand the intricacies of coding and that. I don't want to code anymore, I must admit. I'm done. I
don't
do
blame you.
but I'm done with hard coding if I can avoid it. So I'm just done.
I don't blame you. Yep.
We've talked a little bit about features. What's the big differences between the free version and then the premium paid version? If you can address those a little bit.
Yeah. So the biggest, I think, reasons to upgrade to premium are more just about taking the journaling that you're doing to the next level. And so a lot of that has to do with, unlimited photo and video uploads, being able to do audio transcription. I think this is actually one of the really cool features of day one too, is that if you don't want to write, you can just record yourself speaking and the app will transcribe the text for you. So a lot of people use this, when they're commuting or out on a walk. We've heard some really interesting stories, from people who, when they do their daily walk, that's when they journal and they just like talk into the day one app and the app transcribes it. We also have some really interesting features related to book printing. So one of the cool things that you can do with day one is print your journals. We've seen some really amazing books that people have printed. And if you're a premium user, you get 25% off your book printing, things like that. What else? We literally were just compiling all of these new features because one of the interesting things about day one is as they've added more features, it's been difficult to have the website keep up. So, but I would say like the biggest thing is just that you get unlimited photo and video uploads and a little several more customization options. That you can like add journal colors, more premium colors to your app, or change the icon on your phone, which a lot of people really love those customization options and things like that. Oh, the other one too, I guess this would be a big one, is that you get unlimited devices. So you can use Day One on all of your devices. So your MacBook, the Mac app comes free if you've got a premium, on your iOS device, your iPad, or even your Android device. So you can use Day One on all those devices, and it would all sync across.
Now, and what are we talking about in cost for the premium version, typically?
Yeah, it's $34.99 a year, and so yeah.
And to me, we're talking $34.99 a year. That's less than a couple cups of coffee a month. So if you're afraid of that price tag, I'd be thinking about it and saying, geez, I should be really looking into this, because that's a drop in the bucket at the end.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you buy physical journals, right? Like, I think most physical journals are going to cost you around $20, and that's a one-time, use. So.
Yeah, and I think the whole key with Day One, and I've looked at the iOS version on my iPad a couple times, is it's the customization, as you talked about. It just makes it easier. Mm-hmm. And so then there's no flavor that one size fits all. You've recognized that. And then you've got the templates in there that you're using just to make your life a little easier and your journaling process more streamlined. And I think that's a really important factor.
Absolutely. And I mean, the templates all come free too. So, I mean, the free versions of the templates and the ability to edit templates are in the free version of the app too.
No. And besides the Android roadmap, is there anything coming down the pipe that you can share? Or?
I think I can talk about this because our founder has mentioned it on Twitter, but we're actually working on shared journals.
Oh, wow.
So just like the ability to share within a very private network, a journal. And so a lot of people, especially families, have requested this functionality to be able to share, just like collaborate on journals. Especially now that I have a son, I can see the use case for this. If I wanted to have a journal that I share with my mom or, my siblings and who also have children, we can have a shared journal where we're uploading, photos, sharing. I think this, takes on social networks, frankly, just that it's really still hard, amazingly, to have a more private social network. And this could be a really interesting, I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see how this takes on and if it resonates with people, but we're really excited about it.
Yeah. So what I would argue is on a social network, you don't have the control over your data or what you do with it. And this kind of brings the control a little bit back into the end user. And to me,
absolutely,
that's a big deal. And we all know in social networks, the rules keep changing by the day or by the month, right? So it makes it hard.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the things that's been really important for Day One too is just like the ability to export your data, right? Like, we don't want to own your data. So that's, again, one of those issues that, everybody's running into with Facebook and Twitter, especially. It's just, that the data isn't yours. Like, it's not. So
I think the only big social media company that does exporting data really well is Google. I mean, frankly, Google's got a cool feature called Takeout that you can export all your data out, but everybody else, it's really hard. With Day One, what format does the data export into if you choose to export?
Yeah, you can export into PDF, CSV, JSON. I think that about covers it. But just, the fact that, frankly, when you do the book printing part of the app, you can export it as like a single PDF that's the formatted book, which I think is really cool. Like, you don't have to pay for that. So, yeah.
Can you import data into Day One app? So say you've got some text journals that go back 6 months and you say, I want to import this. Can you do that, or do you have to do it the hard way?
Right now, you can import via JSON, but that is one of the things we're looking at expanding is import functionality. So there's still some limitations there. In fact, I've joked with the team about like creating a simple note import, export import, because obviously I've got a lot of data in simple note that I'm trying to migrate over. So
the benefits of being a podcast host is you can ask that selfish question.
Absolutely.
My brain was already there. So I really appreciate you jumping on and talking about the benefits of journaling and talking about the Day One app. I mean, anybody who hasn't tried journaling, I would say try it today if you haven't, because I think it's a mental health exercise for the head. So it's really important. And it's really important to most people's professional development. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, talk about Day One app or anything else in journaling, how's the best way?
Well, I'm still on Twitter for now, so you can definitely reach out to me on Twitter, Kristen Wright _. Frankly, I mean, if you want to email me, kristen.wright@automatic.com. I mean, I guess if I can, I mean, if I want to give just my own very honest journey with journaling, it changed my life. It kind of makes me sad that I didn't discover it until I was in kind of my late 20s, because I feel like I missed out on remembering a lot of my life, if that makes sense. That journaling has just made me be more present in my life and pay attention. It's given me so many interesting insights into my behavior or reactions, and I don't know who I would be without journaling, frankly. So it is the single most important thing I do every day.
I would second that with a wholeheartedly smile, because I'm there. So thanks, Kristen. You have an awesome day and a great weekend.
Thank you so much. This was really fun. I really, really appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, thank you. This episode of the SDM Show was sponsored by Stunning Digital Marketing, the agency to handle all your WordPress website security needs. Go on over to stunningdigitalmarketing.com and find out how we can help you secure your website so you no longer have an issue with backups, being hacked, or your website being compromised. That's stunningdigitalmarketing.com. A very special thank you to Kristen for joining me on this edition of the SDM Show. Thank you for listening to this edition of the SDM Show. The SDM Show is brought to you by Rob Cairns and Stunning Digital Marketing. For more information about Rob Cairns and Stunning Digital Marketing, go to stunningdigitalmarketing.info. From here, you can connect to us on social media, go to our website, and even go to the podcast to subscribe. This podcast is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Dad, I miss you very much. Keep your feet on the ground. Keep reaching for the stars. Make your business succeed.